Hey guys, got another ZVP for you today. This one is going to be against me, the blue Zerg, in the lower left, and then our red Protoss is going to be Huck, EGHukRC he's going by now. I think they got a new sponsor, Raid Call or something or other. So, probably gonna cruise through the early game a little bit here once it gets, once my volume gets fixed. Gotta remember to do that ahead of time. So I'll probably cruise through the early game a little bit since this is a ZVP. I actually did go back to 15 pool for just a few games. With the newest patch, they went ahead and added pneumatized carapace to hatch tech. And so my thinking was, well, why don't I try 15 pool with 3 base, since I'm going to be able to go ahead and grab that pneumatized carapace to cover my scouting needs, so I don't need as quick of a layer. And the result was, it's almost enough. I still don't feel like 3 base Zerg is the way to go. I really don't. I still felt way too vulnerable to certain heavy chrono boost warp gate timings. My third was just way too vulnerable, and maybe it's just because I've been doing 2 base Zerg play for years, so maybe I'm just way out of my element. But for now, I'm going to stick with what works. So, I'm going to start trying to cast mostly, maybe not exclusively, but mostly games versus established pros or really high Grandmaster players. Because, a little probe dance there from Huck, him and his hero probes. This game kind of helped me put into perspective just how far I have to go still. I was reaching a point where I felt like my ZVP was borderline unbeatable. It really was a mistake on my part whenever I lost a game, and I could look back and say, okay, I'll just not make that mistake again. This game, though, honestly, part of it is just the moment I saw the load screen, I got nervous because I was streaming. I had never played Huck before. He's a really good player. It's going to really put my ZVP to the test. Performance anxiety kicks in. But at the same time, I think there's another plateau here. And I had never really experienced it. I'd, randomly hit someone in a, Team Liquid Open or something and realized, oh wow, TSL Pult's really good, back when he was in TSL. But, this is a little different. This is a situation, like in the last, what is he doing here? I never noticed that. Huck is playing around with his shields. In the last, 2 days, I've hit Grubby twice, Goody, Huck, Pult. So it's now a situation, and I haven't won any of those games. Spoiler, I guess. Sorry about that. I'm kind of reaching a point where I'm realizing there's a whole different plateau that these guys are on. And right now I'm in a place where the best I can hope for, and I consider it a good game, if I just hold my own. I don't have to win the game. I just have to be able to go 10 rounds, And so this was a game that I kind of, nerves kicked in, and I'm going to kind of point out a bunch of mistakes that were made here. But at the same time, it felt like there was a number of points here where I could have gone ahead and won the game. I just didn't. But at the same time, this game felt like a success. Definitely for me, playing against a player like Huck, it felt like a success. So I felt like it was a good one to cast. I'm kind of tempted to cast one of the grubby games as well. I may not, though, because my casts have been so ZVP heavy lately. I might cast the one against Goody, because that one was also really good. The one with Pult was just a steamroll, so we won't bother with that one. Because there's nothing to show except for me getting manhandled. So we're just going to skip that one, okay? So, yeah, at this point, we're just, from my point of view, I'm just spotting pretty standard stuff from Huck. Now, I know he likes his Blink Stalkers, so that is one thing I'm taking into consideration here, is that we may see a lot of Blink Stalker heavy play. And that is one thing I kind of want to mention. I'm noticing a dynamic that's starting to kick in here for Swarm Host, which is if they're Blink Stalker, you need to be very passive with your Swarm Host, and you may even need to kind of split up their management a bit and try and cover your flanks with a few of the Locusts and things like that. If they're going anything robo, you want to be very aggressive. You want to move across the map as quickly as possible. Don't worry about stuttering and kind of gradually moving up with multiple spawns, anything like that, you've got to get to their base and get pressure applied ASAP, or you will lose to a Colossus timing. They're gonna get across the map so quickly that their army will be at full strength when they arrive, and that's not where Swarmhost does well. And reading that is actually a huge deal, and I'm just starting to finally realize that. This is a whole different... It's kind of like when Zerg players were first learning, oh, I should have made drones at this point, and instead I made units, therefore 3 minutes later his timing hit really hard because at that point, that kind of thing. It's like the decision between drones versus units. Well, this is the same kind of deal. This is the decision between aggressive Swarmhost positioning and a little more passive Swarmhost positioning. And that's, I think it's dictated by whether they go Blink or not. That seems to be the big one. It's also a little bit less impacted by if they go Oracle. If they go Phoenix, you can generally be pretty aggressive. Void Ray, yes and no. Void Ray you can basically just burrow because they don't have detection by that point yet. But if they go Oracle, you've got to be really careful, and if they go Phoenix, then they can hold you while you're in motion, and they can catch quite a few, but they're not going to be able to kill all of them. So I'm still kind of on the fence on that one. But anyways, that was a huge tangent. But yeah, and the moral of the story is, if they go Blink, you've got to make sure you're really cautious. And this is going to be a good game to kind of illustrate that. Actually, I start out a little more aggressive, and as the game goes on, I start to really get a feel for Huck's flanking, because he has some really good maneuvers he puts in here to catch my Swarmhosts off guard. Alright, so at this point we're at that mark where the Swarmhost production is going to begin. Now I've got a little bit of excess minerals here, nothing too bad, but I start to float here in a moment from that 76 supply block, so that is problematic. I maybe was a little too heavy on the spines here. Honestly, I didn't... Basically, I wanted to make sure this game played out. So I wanted to make sure I was kind of crossing my T's and dotting my I's, so to speak, because the biggest concern I had was that the game just ended before it could start, and I didn't get a chance to really test things versus a high-level player. Now, at this point, I'm just trying to cover that third. I did have to drop it. I wasn't planning on actually dropping it until I got some Swarmhost pressure going, but I had to drop it due to the supply block. I hit a 76, and then he killed that Overlord, and that hit me with 2 supply blocks consecutively. So I dropped the third to spend my minerals. Normally I would have wanted to wait until he dropped his. So I'm having to hold back on these Swarmhosts for just a little bit to cover them. I should actually be shuffling over these spines rather than building them fresh. And then just build new ones at my natural, since I've got Swarmhosts rallying in that direction. That's going to treat me a lot better. Huck's doing a really good job here of cleaning up the creep, and that's going to become more and more important versus Swarmhost play. I would say it's far more important than versus any other more traditional Zerg play. It's denying that information. Giving away 2 free queens, this is really sloppy on my part. These are very important later on. At least I get a couple stalkers for the trade, so that is something. 3 stalkers, ooh. Bit of a mismicro there on Huck's part. Probably one of the few of this entire game. So Huck's splitting up his army here, and this is really good. He's already I think he's already scouted Swarmhost. We saw a Phoenix fly overhead, so he's already kind of reading what he's going to be up against. And from what I'm seeing, the really successful players against it definitely do split up their army. He catches these spines moving. So that's trouble for me. He would still be able to go ahead and kill him, but this is even worse. I have a queen down here. I'm hoping they'll eventually give us a select all queens button so that no longer happens, or a way to go ahead and control group our queens when they're produced, or rally them. Any of those would be great. But for now, queens tend to be difficult to manage when they first spawn. So I'm still under pressure, and this is where it's really frustrating for me, because we're now 13 minutes. And I have yet to take my Swarmhosts on the offensive. And this is maybe just bad play on my part. And maybe I'm allowing him to intimidate me a bit. Because at this point, with 12 Swarmhosts now, his Stalkers aren't really going to be able to trade too well. He's got a lot of Sentry, Zealot, and Immortal locked up here. So I'm allowing these Stalkers to pin me when they really don't need to. If he blinks in, sure, he may get 2 or 3 Swarmhosts for his entire Stalker count. But after those stalkers are gone, I've now got momentum established, and he's going to have to try and fight me back with Sentry Zealot Immortal, which is probably the worst thing he could possibly have. So I'm inclined to say that this game I overreacted to his Blink Stalkers. I've had other games, actually the last one I cast, where I was too aggressive when he had Blink Stalkers, and I really suffered for it, almost lost that game because of it. In this game, I really should have been across the map much sooner. I would probably still have my third, and maybe I would have lost some of my swarm hosts, but it wouldn't have been nearly as bad as losing my third for free and not getting that pressure started. Nice little move on Huck's part, and I start to recognize here that these just having a couple swarm hosts covering my flank is going to be priceless, and that was actually accidental. This is something that happens just naturally by way of control grouping your eggs with swarm host play, and I find it to be really beneficial, and it just occurs on its own because you make a couple more swarm hosts each production cycle, you control group those eggs, they pop, the next time you hit a swarm host spawn they might be 2 screens back, and so they'll cover your flank. Pretty cool, and more I think that's something I'm going to have to do manually. Getting some good trades here with Huck. Let's see what the losses start to turn into. So it is starting to swing in my favor, so that's good. He's already got Colossus out, though, and here's the big kicker. He's already got 3-0. Now, I'm at 2-2, so that's not going to be horrible, but 3-0 is really when the Colossus start to pay for themselves. Good force fields there. Let a few slip through, so he's going to take some losses. And I'm able to just barely get out in time. So far, so good. And this is what I should have had going on about 2 minutes sooner, 2 to 3 minutes sooner. And now we're in a situation where Huck is kind of playing on my terms, and that's where I need to keep this. Fundamentally he's a better player than me. There's just no denying it, and that's something that I'm hoping more and more as I continue to play I can account for. But I'm also playing part-time in North America while he's playing full-time in Korea, so it's realistic for me to say I may never achieve this level of play. That's fine with me, as long as I'm playing the best I can. Alright, I get a little too close with my swarm host, but fortunately his colossi are stuck in back, so I don't get punished for that. And I'm able to push him back quite a bit. I maybe get a little too frisky with those roaches and hydras, though. I do take some free losses there. But in terms of our trading, it's starting to really go in my favor, so that's excellent. And this is the point where I become a bit of a head case, admittedly. I start to see all these really favorable trades. My third is established. We're on equal base count, which is exactly where I want to be. And I start to think, oh my god, I'm beating Huck. And so, rather than thinking about playing the best I possibly can, I'm thinking about how cool it is that I might beat Huck. And that's not where you want to go with this. That's where mistakes happen. So, I think that's going to go away the more and more I play against these known players. But, I really got to keep my head in the game in that regard. And that, I think, is the biggest reason that, for example, that's a huge mistake. Those locusts are a complete waste. And that was a manual command. I could have gotten more favorable trades against his stalkers, and instead my locust got like a little bit of shield damage on his Nexus and his Colossus, and I would have otherwise been able to push his army back all the way to his third, plus gotten probably 2 to 3 more stalker kills. So little mistakes like that really break up my tempo, and I got to make sure that I'm more and more starting to manually manage my locusts. Now, the other thing I've started to experiment with, and it happens a little bit here later on because I start to recognize that it's going to be necessary to keep Huck pinned down and deal damage. I'm starting to work on managing 2 packs of swarm hosts or managing rallies in 2 different directions, and here's where it begins. Yeah, check that out. Now, I actually didn't set that soon enough, so that's one thing, is you got to set it right as they burrow, otherwise it'll hold the previous rally command. But the idea there is these swarm hosts, these locusts go up and they finally clean up that Nexus, which is just starting to regen shields, while the main pack of locusts keep his army busy. And so, now I'm not quite close enough, so what I really need to do to improve this is have the main group down around here, and the secondary group up around here. So that in that case, I've got both groups doing optimal damage before their locusts expire. They're both close to their target, so to speak. Alright, I botched my rally there. That was another case where I tried to split it up, but I didn't quite time it right. So Huck's going to go ahead and go for some trade here. And this is actually what I want to occur. Now I'm doing a ton of damage here, but I'm out of locusts, so this is the point I probably want to pull back my army. This Nexus actually is doing a ton of damage. Oh, I'm sorry for not catching that. So let's go ahead and back up here for just a moment. Okay, so I'm multitasking here, got a huge fight up top, doing a ton of damage, but once those locusts expire, I really want to make sure that I pull back, because that Nexus actually can do a ton of damage defensively. Get way too close with my locust here. I gave away, or swarm hosts, I gave away, what, probably 6 to 8? Maybe 6, probably. Swarm hosts there, when in fact this should have been a free cleanup. I had a really good flank set up here with my old locust spawn, and that's a trick I'm starting to use more and more, is I'll set up the first group of locusts to flank, and I do get this Nexus, so that's pretty good, but it costs me my entire army, my entire non-swarm host army. But yeah, so I try and flank here, and then I set the other, the second spawn down here, so that they have nowhere to go. Now, if they read it correctly, they're going to recognize that the first group of locusts will expire pretty quickly after, but a lot of times they'll try and dodge that group, and they'll actually blink right into the new spawn, which works out really well. Which is what happened to Huck there for a bit, but he managed to wiggle his way out of it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if this was good or not. In terms of supply, I'm in really great shape. In terms of upgrades, it's 301 to my 2-2, I believe. I think I'm still 2. Yeah, I'm at 2-2. So I'm not doing horrible. I think I could have been a lot better off, though. Now, the other thing is my swarm host needed to be back on the offensive again. I need to, since I did commit the investment to shut down that third, I need to make sure it doesn't get rebuilt. So these swarm hosts actually should be up here clearing out pylons, clearing out the assimilators, pinning down his colossi. And the stalkers, well, I'll deal with those with the roaches that I can muster. Roach Queen handles stalkers pretty well at this stage of the game. Now, what I did was I pulled, what is that, 9 swarm hosts to serve as static defense. Now, this was not right. 3 to 4, I think, will be good, but 9 was a huge overreaction. And this is, I mean, this is just bad decision making on my part. I'm slipping back to those mistakes that I watch a lot of other players make with their swarm hosts. In response to, oh my god, how do I deal with all this blink harassment? So, yeah, I think that's an improvement I can make in the future, because that's such a huge supply investment and resource investment. And just imagine how much extra damage I would be doing if I even had 6 more swarm hosts and I just left 3 at home to hold the fort down. 3 is going to be fine. That's going to occupy his blink stalkers indefinitely. So that's not a problem. And these, the remaining 6 swarm hosts could be, up here pressuring his third, his new third that he's currently distance mining. So yeah, I mean, I'm in this place where I start to look at this game and go, how did I lose it? Because right now, if people were playing the odds and they thought we were just equal skilled players, they didn't know this was Huck, this is just 2 players in Grandmaster, they would probably put their money on me, right? But we already know from me accidentally spoiling it earlier that I lost this game, so we're going to get to see why. So, good positioning here on these front swarm hosts. I really need to make sure I focus down that cyber core. Now he gets a great flank here on my stalkers, but I don't think this is necessarily justification to pull back my swarm hosts. He's losing enough of his stalkers here, and I have a Hydra rally. So I think, realistically, my swarm host should have stayed up front. Instead, I divert a good share of my locusts to getting his 4 remaining stalkers pulled back. And really, those locusts should have been pressuring his natural. Because what's, 8 locusts going to do anyways, right? He gets a few swarm hosts here. Nothing too major. I think 3. Although at this point, my mining is starting to dwindle. I've lost mining on my main and natural, and my third is oversaturated. So I could be distance mining there. So now Huck has his third re-established. He's back in this game, and I kind of missed my critical opportunity to seal the deal there. A lot more aggressive with my Swarm hosts, and had I only had a couple or three tied up at my third against Blink, rather than 9, I think we would have seen this game already ended in my favor, because I would have had enough Swarm hosts to either shut down his third or shut down his production. If I clear out this entire natural, he loses a Robo, he loses his Twilight Council for future upgrades, his Forge, and 2 gateways. That's fairly crippling, especially considering that's his only remaining gas mining up until that third is established. So either one of those I think would have been really good plays. Now, this is really bad on my part. I saw that. I had Locust expiring there, and I saw that he was moving up. And look at those storms. I pay for it in a big way. Oh, dear God. I mean, that's painful for me to watch even in the replay. Imagine what it felt like playing it. It was just like, are you kidding me? I had this game, and I just threw away 90 supply worth of Swarm hosts. Okay, 70 supply, but still. So at this point, I'm actually now fighting a bit of a losing battle. I was in great shape, but that just kind of reiterates that you've got to always keep an eye on where their army's at. And I think one thing I'm going to work on improving is once I get to that 200 supply situation, a couple of cute grabs there, but not enough locusts left to even do anything with it. So I go ahead and eventually I grab these and start working with them as part of my main army, which I should have done from the beginning. But one thing I'm going to start trying to incorporate is really getting more Overseers, because I also had a game recently where I lost because my one Overseer got stuck somewhere because the unit it was following died. So that had no excuse either, because I lost to like 4 DTs cleaning up my base, and when I ran my army over expecting my Overseer to be in tow, it was actually way over at his natural. So I'm going to start using Overseers more heavily, using Changelings more heavily, because I really need to make sure I'm able to see where he's at all times. Great grabs here, got a lot of free cleanup, almost got another Colossus there, but starting to claw my way back into this. He still actually is behind on unit efficiency, so to speak. He's ahead on losses. I don't know if you would call that ahead or behind, but either way, I'm doing better on the units lost. But I mean, just imagine where this would have been had I been watching my Swarm host more carefully and watching his advance, and paying attention to the fact that he had 8 full energy High Templar. I mean, that's kind of important to know. So I recognize he's going for some storms, and I start splitting up my Swarm host, but that was just a case of nervous miss-micro right there. I recognized I may have just given away the game with that earlier mistake, and it started to make me really nervous, honestly. Pretty good engagement. The trade was actually a lot better than it could have been. The Vipers kind of pulled their weight. Imagine how good that engagement could have been had this pack not moved up. I had at that point 3 different packs of Swarm hosts that I was trying to manage independently, and that's still something I'm getting comfortable with, because they're all still on the same control group. So if I, as a kind of twitch reaction, hit my control group and move based on the control group, it's going to incorrectly position at least 1, probably 2 of those 3 packs of Swarm hosts. At this point, I'm working with little to nothing. My third is mining out, and I should have probably had a transfer here at this point. 39 out of a necessary 18. So there was no reason for me to not have only like 8 to 10 drones there and everything else on my fourth. And so I'm starving here for a little while because of just a few little sloppy mistakes. And now he's up to 2 very healthy bases versus my 1.5 bases, and one of them is not correctly mining. Still, though, the Swarm host continues to prove just how ridiculously efficient it is. I'm down to a very low Swarm host count, but because his Blink Stalker count is staying low, he's not able to get a cost-effective trade-off. Need to mix in a couple Hydras, and if I remember at this game, I actually forgot Hydra speed. I did. Yeah, I remember I noticed that at the very end when it would have really paid off. Start to get some more drones, so that's good. Still, these could have been rallied over. So I just, in these kind of down-to-the-wire games, I really need to watch my resource management, because that's what's going to make a big difference in terms of who's going to have more stuff when the few little engagements occur. Alright, getting some more good trades here. He's trying to move up for a flank with the Stalkers, and probably accidentally had the Zealots grouped with him as well. Very long game. It's kind of coming down to the end though, so that's good. I always get kind of worn out casting these longer games, trying to have things to talk about. At this point, I'm just trying to get as aggressive as possible with this. I don't know if that Blinding Cloud really paid off. It did force him to walk into my Locus, so I guess now that I think about it, it was good. I traded one Swarm Host for like 2 Stalkers and an Immortal. I think I could have probably done that with Abduct a little cleaner, because then I can abduct the Immortal. It dies from one volley of Locus, abduct a couple Stalkers, rather than having everything engage at once and my damage is then evenly distributed. Now I'm getting way too far up here. Okay, and this actually I want to talk about. At first glance, it's like, oh, that micro, man, that was really cool. Because I got off like 6 abductions, and it was really cool looking, and so much APM was invested. Now, the first thing, obviously, is these Locusts needed to be diverted. Had these Locusts been diverted, that would have been probably a good choice. But based on the situation at hand here, did I really want to be abducting his entire army? So I got, yeah, 2 Stalkers, then 2 more Stalkers, then an Immortal, then 2 more Stalkers. So I got a total of like 6 Stalkers, 7, 8. I got 8 Stalkers and an Immortal altogether. And what I did basically was I basically just reproduced the same engagement I would have had I not abducted. What I needed to do was abduct the Immortal and maybe a couple Stalkers, clean that up, then abduct a couple more, and stagger it a bit so that I'm getting kind of maximum efficiency for my units. Now, the one nice thing is the Locusts that got diverted up top, they did go ahead and clean up some probes. So that's good, except for now I just have all these idle drones hanging out down here because I'm completely tunnel visioned at this point. You know, this could have just been such a different game had I had another base up here with these drones mining at it. I mean, there was plenty of opportunities for me to divert my minerals to that, but instead I've just been completely focused on just winning with the units I had, and whatever resources happen to be in my bank I'll spend, but other than that, I'm not even worrying about my economy at this point. Really, really sloppy on my part. And, it's just, at this point, this is just kind of an example of the game being Hux because he was the more consistent player throughout the game. I made a lot of those little miss micros, I made some bad decisions. I actually liked this decision to divert these Swarm Hosts up top. Had I been able to continue with my pressure at the 3rd, I think that would have been really good because it would have cleaned up his 4th. So at this point, he's getting free cleanup on my Vipers. I'm trying to be cute with the Blinding Cloud, but there's not going to be too much that can happen there. Blink Stalkers are just way too fast compared to Vipers. Alright, so I think at this point I kind of just recognize it's over and GG out. I caught the fact that all my drones were idle, so now I have 52 drones mining on 24 worth of patches. So continuing with my great economy management this game. And he's just got way too much army. Even though I did quite a bit of damage up top, he's now getting some Blink Stalker her ass off, and he's going to clean up my one remaining mining base. And again, I mean, had I been keeping up with my macro, this would be a base. I would have had evenly distributed mining between all 3 of them, so that this, probably my 3rd hat, wouldn't even had mined out yet because it wouldn't have had all that oversaturation. And we would have seen a very different game, even with all the missteps in the micro category where I gave away a bunch of free Swarm Hosts to Storm and that whole side of it. I just would have had more stuff, and when I pushed for his 3rd, instead of there being 6 Swarm Hosts and 7 Vipers and then 10 Roaches, it would have been probably double that, and that's a huge difference at this stage of the game. So I was probably kind of down on myself this cast, but I think it's necessary. I think I played at a level that is very subpar compared to what I'm used to, and it's strictly because of who I was up against and the fact that the player I was up against was using a little kind of some subtle differences to his tactics that threw me off guard. So, alright, that's about it. Thanks for watching, guys.